One of the problems that cupcakes have is that because they have a large surface area to volume ratio, they tend to dry out a lot in the oven. One way to reduce this is to warm the liquid ingredients in the microwave to about 120 degrees before mixing them into the dry ingredients. This increases the temperature of the batter so that the cupcake can cook through to the center without over baking the outside. This also has the advantage of reducing the total baking time in the oven from, say, 15 to 20 minutes down to as little as 11 minutes. Faster baking means a moister cake. Measure out your dry and liquid ingredients. Whisk the liquid ingredients until they're blended, and then warm them in the microwave, depending on the amount, until you get a temperature of 120 degrees or so. It should feel very warm but not hot to the fingers. You don't want to scramble the eggs. Whisk again and then add the warm liquid to the dry ingredients. And using a two-pronged fork, whisk together until it's just blended. You don't want to beat the mixture. That's going to make the cupcakes a little too light and too cake-like. Cupcakes do better if they're a little denser than a regular cake. Once it's blended, make sure you scrape the sides, and then it's ready for scooping and baking. Life can be tough for a cupcake in the oven. If too little is scooped, they end up looking anemic and under-risen. If too much is scooped, you can get the volcano top, which isn't very attractive and difficult to decorate, or worst of all, the muffin top, where the edge overbakes and can be dried out, tough and not very pleasant to eat. The solution to all of these is to use a controlled scooping technique, which ensures that each cupcake gets exactly the proper amount of batter. Precise scooping requires two tools. I prefer a 1 7/8 inch diameter ice cream scoop and a regular dinner spoon. Because all batters rise at slightly different rates, each scoop has to be tailored to the recipe you're using. For example, in my chocolate cake, which rises the most of all my cakes, I fill the scoop up level and then I have to scoop it out twice deeply and then remove any drips off the bottom so that only about 2/3 of the scoop is full. That gives me just enough batter to get a perfect rise right up to the edge of the paper cupcake liner. For my vanilla cake, a single scrape across the top to just create a slight negative meniscus is what's required. For the lemon cake, which has lemon juice added to it, the rise starts almost immediately, and what I find I have to do is actually scoop the lemon cupcake batter so that it's mounded up as much as possible to get an even rise. It'll almost fill the cupcake liner, but it doesn't rise very much because it's already risen because of the action of the lemon juice. For the spice cake, like the vanilla cake, it's just one light scoop. Always remember to scrape the bottom off so that when you're filling your cupcake liners, you don't get drips around the edge, which can burn and look unattractive. Scooped accurately, as I've indicated, each cupcake in the entire rack will come out with a slight dome and a slight depression right where it meets the cupcake liner. This gives you a margin that can be filled with frosting all the way around the edge as you frost the tops to seal in the moisture, which is one of the other purposes of the frosting, not just to add flavor, but to help prevent the cupcakes from drying out in the top. The next thing we want to do is cool the cupcakes in such a way that they don't dry out. Exposed to the air, a lot of moisture, because they're hot, will be driven off and the cupcake will end up dry. What I do to prevent that is place a second cupcake tray on top of it, and using binder clips, seal it shut and let it cool, sealed, so that all that moisture is kept in the cupcakes and doesn't dry them out. Another thing I like to use is a high-legged cooling rack. It permits a lot more air circulation and lets the cupcakes cool faster. A lot of from-scratch bakers are going to be upset about what I'm going to say right now, but after 40 years of baking cakes, I have to say that I can't make as good a cake from scratch as I can when I start with a boxed mix and make certain adjustments to it to improve its flavor. As they come out of the box, generally some of these can be good, but all benefit from a little help. The first thing to do, though, to get good results from a box mix is to try several and decide for yourself which tastes the best and has the best texture that satisfies you and your family the most. After that, I recommend some minor alterations. For the vanilla and the dark chocolate, I prefer substituting whole milk instead of water, and parquet squeezed margarine instead of the oil. The funny thing about the parquet margarine is that I honestly don't think it tastes very good by itself, but when it's used in one of these mixes, it actually comes out better than if you use real butter. For the lemon cake, I recommend adding about a half a cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice and reduce the amount of water to compensate. In this case, you don't want to use the parquet or the milk because that gives it a heartier flavor and actually weakens the zesty lemon flavor. For the spice cupcake, again, use just oil and regular water. The milk and the margarine, again, make it heartier and weaken the spiciness of it. Also, for the chocolate cake, I found after testing 11 different types of chocolate cakes that I got the best results from the Pillsbury dark chocolate cake that I had added half a cup of sugar to. The problem is, as you can see, there is no Pillsbury dark chocolate cake here, and that is because in 2015 they quit making it, which is a shame because with that extra sugar it was really a super mix. With these changes, any boxed mix, I believe, can compete with the very best cakes made from scratch. Another way using boxed mixes help is in consistency. A cup of flour, because it's compressible, can weigh anywhere from 120 to 160 grams. If you stir or sift the flour before measuring it and end up with a cup that weighs on the low end, say 120 grams, you're going to end up with a recipe, if it calls for 140 grams of flour, that's too wet. If you end up with a heavily scooped cup of flour that's 160 grams, it's going to end up too dry. By using a box mix with all of the ingredients very carefully weighed to the gram, you end up with a much more consistent cake texture. Additionally, some of the terrible chemicals that people warn you about aren't so terrible at all. They're emulsifiers and mixing agents that allow for a great variability in how much you mix the mix, beat it, and still come out with a good product. I'm sure every cupcake maker has a pet peeve. Mine happens to be sprung cupcake papers. Papers that have relaxed so much that they don't stay in the pan. What I do is cut 2-inch high paper strips from cardstock, tape them together around a rolling pin, and then put my cupcake papers inside of them, and it keeps them compressed so that they fit perfectly into the cupcake pan. Over the years, I've conducted several taste tests using family, friends, and coworkers. The one cupcake which continually is chosen above all the others is a dark chocolate cupcake with a rich vanilla frosting. Second place goes to a chocolate cupcake with chocolate frosting, followed by lime, mint, and lemon cupcakes, and then spice with a cream cheese frosting. In last place is vanilla with a vanilla frosting. Now the last place position doesn't mean they didn't like it, it's just that they preferred the other flavors more.